Go.
This is an absolutely loaded week. We could split this into two episodes. We really could. There may even be an Elite Heat extra. Don't hold me on that because there's that much to go through. But
Wow.
what I will say, Kevin, as we discussed and as I put in the community post earlier, our 40 to 31 of our top 50 all time as well. You've seen the title. There's a bit of discussion today about WWE, UFC, Endeavour, and there's been releases. There's been Randy Orton news. There's been a stadium show in Australia announced. Lots going on, Kevin. How you doing, pal?
I'm good, pal. Yeah, just a little house cleaning. We're gonna get to the releases. We'll get to Randy Orton. We'll get to all that stuff later on. Uh, yeah. Before we get further into the episode, though, please 5-star reviews on Spotify. That'd be great. Yeah, the crux of this week's episode, basically, we're going to be discussing the WWE and UFC merger, why we collectively think that merger is going to be a failure. We're going to tell you why. It's going to be a failure. Now, yes, maybe from a financial standpoint, it'll be a success. But the content, if it goes the way that we envision this merger is going to go, it's going to be an absolute flop and a failure. And Vince and Kennedy McMahon will regret selling WWE to Endeavour.
Do you realize how many people you've annoyed right now? Just like the wording, the verbiage, bringing up Vince McMahon. This is gonna be fun. So we're gonna really unpack the merger. This happened a few weeks ago. This is not saying we're behind with news, but there's that much going on every week that this was a huge story 2 weeks ago, and now there's been like 8 other things that have happened since. So we're going to try and address this so we don't just forget about it. Because Kevin, you used the word failure. I don't know if I'm as strong in my position, but I share a lot of the same gripes that we'll get to. So Kevin, without further ado, just want to kick us off. Why do you think that? What makes you, Wrestling Uncovered, wrestling YouTuber, podcaster, extraordinaire, think it could be a failure?
Well, here's the number one thing, right? This is the number one factor for me. Wrestling fans and mixed martial arts fans do not like each other. Like that's number one thing, right? So, and I don't remember exactly who it was that said this. I'm pretty sure it was Ari, the big wig at Endeavour, where he's like, "Oh, I envision a world where WWE and UFC fans all get along on one umbrella and they all enjoy the product at the same time." Now, when I hear that statement from a corporate giant like that, I hear that statement from a guy who is relentless in trying to get what he wants, right? So he probably envisions that big plan, and he's going to do whatever to try to make that plan a reality. That sounds to me like down the road, we're heading towards a lot of crossover, and that's not going to be taken very kindly by either side. You know, MMA fans are not going to want to see Austin Theory sitting in the third row next to Dana White and John Jones at a UFC fight. And WWE fans are not going to want to see whatever UFC fighter. Oh, here's Nate Diaz, pal. Nate Diaz can talk on the mic, put him in a wrestling ring, shove him down everybody's throat, push him to the top. We saw how people took to Ronda Rousey. We've been there, done that already with this experiment. It worked for a little while, 8 months, 9 months, and then everybody was sick of Ronda Rousey. And then they extended it 4 years. She had a 4 or 5 year run when it's all said and done. Yeah, I don't know. I can't envision a world where this WWE and UFC merger, and they have this idea where it's like, okay, these are going to be one whole entity. I just can't see it. There's two different sides of the spectrum. Like, you look at wrestling when it's promoted during the NFL, it's like, oh, that's wrestling I used to watch when I was a kid. Okay, cool. But if you have WWE being promoted during UFC fights, all the fans could be like, get that fake shit off of our screen. Get that out of here. We don't want to see that. I don't know. I like I said, at top, I'll finish this and I'll let you go. At the top, from a business standpoint, it's going to work, obviously. WWE and UFC are going to make money, obviously. But from a content perspective, it could potentially be a failure.
Okay, so that's mainly attacking from the content point of view. That is fair, and the fact that the crossover is, I mean, look, wrestling, MMA fans, that some people watch both. generally you're more tribal to one. Usually, I know a lot of the people listen to us just into wrestling. They couldn't care less about MMA, and then vice versa. I'm sure a lot of MMA fans like, oh my god, WWE, a bunch of naked men rolling around play fighting. That fake crap. No, keep that away from me. So in that regard, that makes sense from the content point of view. Obviously, the money is ridiculous, as is always the case with these deals. WWE broker. Like, I don't know how many millions, how many billions exactly. That always seems to change and compound year to year, and some deals are back ended. I don't know. So there's that regard. But Kevin, just to clarify, where you're coming at it from is when we're watching SmackDown, and all of a sudden, look, our partners UFC. Here we've got Robert Whittaker, Nate Diaz, and Israel Adesanya sitting in the first row. Oh look, Theory's coming out mocking them. Oh, one slapped him. Okay.
Yeah, nobody's gonna want to see that, and it's gonna lead to, or not going to. It could lead the road of wrestling down a particularly unknown path, just a path of uncertainty. Like it seems like things are gonna change from a WWE and UFC standpoint. Right now, the UFC has been operating as its own thing under the Endeavour umbrella. We haven't seen major changes aside from like ridiculously priced pay-per-views, which will come with WWE, I'm sure. We're going to be paying $85.99 for Money in the Bank 2025 on Peacock Premium, pal. But, yeah.
Kevin, I'll follow up on you with that. So one of the big things with this that they've hyped up is these like blockbuster weekend bundles, almost, where like Friday Night SmackDown streaming. I think it's going to be now on USA for this. There's a new big deal as of February. Was it next year or the year after? One of them. But, a massive Friday Night SmackDown. Then we're going to have UFC 290 blah or UFC 300 or a UFC show on Saturday. And then a WWE pay-per-view on Sunday. So because everything's under the same umbrella, they're going to promote, obviously, WWE a lot at UFC events, UFC more at WWE events. That's just what's going to happen because it's a merger. So what are we going to have? UFC 295, there's a big heavyweight fight coming up. And commentary, they do a whole 3-minute segment. You got to check out tomorrow's Fastlane pay-per-view. Sami Zayn stepping into the squared circle against his longtime best friend, Kevin Owens, exclusively for $74.99 here on Peacock Premium Plus. Like, is that going to be the direction? Because, Kevin, I take a bit of a gripe at this, just the thing you hint at there, where creative is going to be fully taken over with, like, segments. Now, I'll believe it when I see it. If I'm watching WWE in a year and we're watching Theory trying to punch some like UFC bantamweight fighter, and they're like on the mic, Theory's screaming at him, saying, "Get out of my ring, you suck." And some UFC fighter does a shoot takedown on Theory. If that's what our WWE content becomes, fair enough. Many people would say that's very Vince McMahon and that he's not involved anymore, so we won't see that. It waits to be seen, Kevin, but anything else you want to add on here?
Well, I think from one standpoint, right, when you look at it, it could go this way, where at the end, this merger, all it means is that WWE is going to continue operating alone, and the UFC is going to operate alone, and the revenue is going to be shared as one grand company, right? That it could shake out that way. Dana White's still in charge of WWE. Dana White's still in charge of UFC. Nick Khan and Triple H still in charge of WWE. It doesn't sound like it when you've got the head of the company talking about he wants the wrestling fans and MMA fans to dance together. It doesn't sound like there's going to be that kind of harmony where they're all just playing in their own field. I mean, that could very well be the case, and maybe we're just making a big deal out of nothing, though, and nothing changes. But to me, it sounds like we're going to have an overhaul of creative, as you put it. Where, we're going to see, like, WWE in 18 months is going to look completely different than what it looks like now. I don't know if that's hyperbolic to say, but seemingly not a lot of people are talking about this as a possibility. The WWE that we know really could change. Like, what if this guy from Endeavour comes in and is like, all right, we're paying Mike Mizanin how much? Hold on. No, out of here. We're paying whoever. Karrion Kross how much? Out of here. Finn Balor? Fergie? How much is he getting paid to do what? What does he do again? Out of here. And it's like this whole new narrative where they bring in, like, retired MMA fighters to become wrestlers, and they focus on only like legitimate credible athletes, no more indie wrestlers, things like that. Go ahead.
And on that, the next in line program is literally that. Athletes, collegiate athletes, just bringing them into NXT. That's in Nick Khan brought that in 2 years ago, 3 years ago for stuff like this. So that now, when it's just real shoot athletes who have barely had any wrestling training, that's going to be more so the model. And as you say, will that lead to Ari and Manuel and the Endeavour executives looking at the budget list of the WWE wrestler salaries, going, Balor's on that much? Excuse me? Bronson Reed makes 400,000. I don't know, roughly. Bronson Reed makes that much? What? And then they just put lines through like half most of what we know, and bring in a bunch of the next in line guys on like lower money because they're legitimate athletes, and then it overhauls what we see. And from a creative standpoint, who knows how long Triple H is going to be the head of creative? We don't know. It's great at the moment. Raw's more watchable. I watched a bunch of Raw this week. Raw's a more watchable show. SmackDown's watchable, which is good, and the pay-per-views are better across the board. But so the PLEs. But who knows? What if in 6 months, Ari and Manuel or some of the executives go, "Yep, Paul, we appreciate your service, but we're going to bring in X guy and this team to write and produce." You never know. This stuff could well happen. And we conspiracy theorists are going to bring this up. That'll never happen. Okay. We'll see.
So I want to just shed some light on the deal that was just signed today between the NBC and WWE. So they're going to do 4 premium shows. Not sure what they are, whether they're going to be pay-per-views as they are right now, whether that's like a fast lane. But they're going to have 4 premium shows that air on NBC, on broadcast TV. And then they're going to have SmackDown on USA Network. But there's really... The status of Monday Night Raw is up in the air. They don't know what's going to happen with Monday Night Raw. It looks like it's not going to be on USA anymore. They're talking about potentially going to Disney, Amazon, Netflix, and potentially changing days of the week. So this is already we're seeing this is not Vince McMahon's product anymore. Vince McMahon has cashed out. He got his $8.9 billion, whatever it was, took his stocks to the bank, gave some money to Stephanie and Shane and some other women that we don't know about that are unidentified that have allegations against him. And now he's riding off into the sunset, pal. He's washed his hands with WWE. I'll just say this: if Monday Night Raw changes to another night, I mean that goes to show you that anything goes at this point.
Yeah,
it's not Vince's product anymore. It's not Vince's vision. Anything could happen. Literally, this could mean the change of pro wrestling. Like, pro wrestling as we know it could literally change into a different genre, a different feel. It might not be so entertainment based, so kid friendly. They might try to make it more adult friendly now to compete with UFC. Who knows? Who knows what the hell is going to happen? It's very, like I said, an unknown road.
Well, Kevin, there's been a number of these fabric of wrestling changes in the past few years. I think WrestleMania going to 2 nights a few years ago, it was a big one. It's now multi-day, big events. Like, that was a change. Obviously, Triple H taking over the creative, which has now been a thing for over a year. That's a massive fabric-changing thing. For decades, Vince McMahon just ran that ship. Now you're mentioning that with Monday Night Raw. If Monday Night Raw, it doesn't become Monday Night Raw, it becomes WWE Raw, streaming Tuesday nights on Peacock Premium Plus, or streaming on Disney Plus on Wednesday night. Like, if stuff like that happens, you're thinking, okay, what is wrestling becoming? Kevin, I'll ask this to you, just very, very broad question, but feel free to put in whatever you want to say here. What does wrestling look like in 2-3 years? Like, we're doing this show, throw out, I don't know, this could seem ridiculous, get wild. In 2-3 years, WWE's made countless billions from these deals, but what does the week to week look like for us, the fans?
If I had to make a prediction, in 2 years' time, I think guys like Sami Zayn, Kevin Owens, Fergie, The Miz, guys that are in their 40s, guys that came from the indies, don't have any real sports background, I think they're all gone. I think they're all gone. I think it's a different landscape. Maybe Roman Reigns will still be there in 2 years. Maybe Seth Rollins will still be there. You know, I would say like there's like an 80% chance that both of those guys will be there. More so Rollins than Roman. Roman might be in Hollywood by this time. I think, you know, we'll see a day-to-day, week-to-week basis. I think we'll be looking at a completely different show. I don't know. I don't think we'll have premium PLEs on Peacock. That deal's coming up soon. That streaming deal with Peacock and the WWE Network being leased on there. I don't know. I mean, we could very well be looking at monthly pay-per-views on ESPN Plus. Looking at $100 for SummerSlam and WrestleMania. I think it's going to be a very different world. But what about you?
Yeah.
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking this is the thing, right? Now, as long as Triple H is still in the position he's in, you'll still have your Sami Zayns, your Balors, your like these sort of guys. Nakamura will be in main event spots. I don't believe in 2-3 years that's what will be happening anymore. I think what's going to happen is, as I mentioned before, Nick Khan brought in the Next in Line program for a reason, and the real kind of focus on real either collegiate athletes, legitimate like 20-year-olds, 25-year-olds who've been in other sports, who are naturally just like jacked beasts, these sort of wrestlers. I think we're going to see an influx of a lot of them. I mean, Bron Breakker's probably going to be the face of it, I think. When he comes in, it'll be like, this guy sets the tone, and we're going to have a lot of guys from that same ilk. And I think the direction of the product generally is going to be, more reality-based. I think Ari Emanuel is going to look at what's happening and go, okay, how are we going to get UFC fans to watch WWE more? He'll watch WWE and go, okay, Nakamura versus Sami Zayn, that's nice. But no UFC fan who just loves real fights is going to want to see this. They want to see guys who look more like, young, powerful, like hybrid athletes. So they're going to probably start to bring in just an influx of those guys who are the next in lines, the collegiate athletes. That's my opinion. How that looks from a creative standpoint, I don't know. They'll still do entertainment. They'll still do storylines. But I think personnel is going to gradually shift over the next 2-3 years. Triple H is creative. I don't know if he's going to be told from higher up, from the people at Endeavour who run the show now, to change anything and just what exactly they want to change. But I think this is huge. And once again, no one's really addressing this sort of stuff, which I find interesting. Like, this is landscape changing. It's more than just, WWE getting a bunch of money and they're now with Endeavour. There's more to it than that. As far as what we consume week to week and the big behind the scenes things, I wonder what Nick Khan was telling the UFC people to get this deal over the line, what he was telling Endeavour. Or is he telling them, we're going to have Nakamura versus Rollins main event every PLE like we have at the moment? Is Nakamura versus Rollins the PLE main event that UFC fans are going to want to watch? No. They're going to want to watch Bron Breakker versus Roman Reigns, Bron Breakker versus the guy who's next in line. Guys like Gabe Stevenson or like people of that ilk, people like that who are genuinely impressive from an athletic point of view.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
And here's why, here's the crux, why I think this is going to be a failure. Right? We see this overhaul. Again, this is all based on forecasting and predictions and what we think and what we have an idea could happen, right? Yeah, we see this overhaul where WWE, they're bringing in hybrid athletes. We get more work shoot style. The storylines presumably are going to be more serious, more adult. We're not going to see Nakamura fantasizing over Seth Rollins' back anymore. We're not going to see storylines like that. Fergie opening Raw like, Damian, you cost me the championship. Well, I'm Mr. Money in the Bank. Like, we're not going to see stuff like that. It's going to be more adult orientated, I assume. Now, if Ari Emanuel comes in, starts getting rid of all these indie darlings, and Nick Khan is forecasting and changing, overhauling the personnel and the way talent's brought in, they're gonna piss away all the wrestling fans, all the people that live, breathe, and like love wrestling. Like what you say? You got someone that's like 50 years old, right? That they're the prime of their life. They were hanging out with their family, working a nice job, making good money, raising their kids. The prime of their life, they're watching Stone Cold Steve Austin every Monday night and Hulk Hogan every Monday night in the NWO. That person is not going to want to see anything to do with work shoot fights or like a wrestler's wrestler being gone and being off of WWE and just this new prototype talent being brought in. It's going to be, I don't want to say that it's going to kill wrestling as we know it, but it could very well happen. And there's not going to be a lot of wrestling fans on board. Like, I don't know who they're going to try to appeal. I don't know. And then, but here's the other thing too. Dana White is not interested in playing ball with this. Dana White was asked about it in a press conference, like, what do you think about Ari Emanuel saying that MMA fans and wrestling fans are going to coexist and it's going to be butterflies and rainbows with this new partnership? And he's like, that's the dumbest shit I ever heard. Dana White keeps it absolutely 100. There is no sports owner, no entertainment owner, no team owner like Dana White. Dana White will tell you how it is almost every single time in a press conference. He doesn't want to play ball on this. Dana White thinks it's stupid. I mean, that should tell you something right there. There's already a disconnect.
Look, Kevin, I'll say this. Now, I think the most logical, common sense thing that WWE should do for the next year, 2 years, 3 years is sort of like a more of the same type thing that they're doing now. Because what they're doing now, the shows week to week are more watchable. We can get content off things week to week. There's not like just a dryness and a barren landscape in wrestling like there was for years in like 2017, 2018, that time period. Stuff's happening. We're engaged. We're invested. And what they're doing at the moment seems to be working fairly well. Granted, maybe X wrestler could be more deserving of a push, or they need to do this match. Like, there's always going to be that sort of stuff in wrestling, Kevin. But I think really, if they were smart with this, they continue what they're doing from a creative direction. And as Nick Khan discussed, as I mentioned before, if they want to phase in the prototypes, the 20, 25-year-old prototype athletes, phase them onto the main roster for like that look and that direction, go for it, but do it slowly. Be smart. Don't just be rushing guys in. Don't overhaul the creative product because you've signed a deal and, oh my God, Ari wants something that UFC fans can enjoy more. We're just going to put a heap of Bron Breakker clones on WWE Raw because that's not going to work. So if they want to try and slowly phase out Balor's, Sami Zayn's, these wrestlers who have been so good for so long and move into a new sort of era, the Endeavour, like the big UFC partnership era, where WWE, they've cashed out their chips and now it's just sort of whatever Ari Emanuel and executives want. That's fair. But I don't know, Kevin, I keep drawing back to this one interview. Now, I put it in a video on my YouTube channel about 2 years ago. Nick Khan was asked about, the direction, WWE, what they're looking for in wrestlers, who they're hiring. And he said, we respect our independent talent. Wrestlers had great careers there, but looking forward, our direction is guys who are the athletes, guys who are younger, 20s, finishing college, this sort of thing. That's their focus. So my prediction, what I think, a lot more of that. I think that's going to be phased in over the next year, 2 years, 3 years. Prototype wrestlers, the directional shift, maybe not 100%. I don't think it's going to do a 180, Kevin. I don't imagine we're going to be watching Raw, Wednesday night Raw, pal. We tune in and there's a brawl for all with Bron Breakker and a bunch of like legit fighters opening the show. I don't think it'll get there, but I think it's going to go more towards that than Fergal and Sami Zayn having a great match on Raw, pal.
Yeah, and is my point fair that like wrestling fans are not going to want to see that? Like they're going to want to see Fergal and Nakamura and wrestlers like that for the next generation to come. A lot of wrestling fans are not going to be on board if there is a complete overhaul and change of direction and philosophy with the company.
Yeah, no, like you're right about that. I just think, what they're doing now is working in the regard of every pay-per-view seems to break X and Y records. Money seems to be through the roof in that regard. Hell, Kevin, that they've announced a big Perth Stadium show, Elimination Chamber next February. I've signed up for the pre-sale. I want to get tickets. I'm happily flying across Australia to watch that. So business in that regard is doing pretty well, right? So I guess in that regard they're doing something right. I'm willing to fly across Australia to sit in the stadium and watch whatever they're going to put on. No matches have been announced, no wrestlers have been announced, but I want to experience that show. And are you going to a WWE show sometime soon, pal?
Well, before I answer that, pal, I want to ask you this: are you ready to sit there in a stadium in Australia, in the heart of Australia, pal, surrounded by 100,000 screaming Aussies?
Yeah.
And you're all going to bear witness to Grayson Allen burying John Cena. Are you ready for that?
Grayson Allen?
Grayson Waller, sorry.
So disrespectful. Pal, if they do Grayson Waller versus John Cena, I would go off. That's like a dream match for most Australians. Grayson Waller and Cena. I'm sure Rhea Ripley's going to have like a co-main event. Or maybe if Rhea Ripley main events, she better be facing Jade Cargill or someone who's worth main eventing against. Bianca Belair. Don't just put Rhea Ripley in the main event against like Natalia. Please, Nick Khan. Anyway, that being
Yeah.
said, Kevin, anything else on the
No,
Endeavour, the
I was just gonna
merger?
say that I am going to the Royal Rumble in Tropicana Field in Tampa, pal. The Royal Rumble now, I guess it's hosted by baseball stadiums. It's been like that for what, like 5 years now, 6 years. Tropicana Field is no slouch. That infamously is home to the Thunderdome, pal. So there you go. Well, not the
Wow.
Tropicana Field, but Tampa was home of the Thunderdome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Kevin, one thing I will say just as well, in 2018, WWE held the infamous Super Showdown event, which, what was that? Was that Triple H Undertaker, the final ride or whatever they called it?
Yeah.
And they had a bunch of like, I think Cena versus
Yeah.
Elias, and Cena did this thing where he was like, he like did the, or whatever it was, he did like the Thunder Fist finisher or something.
Yeah.
That was like 5 years ago, right? That was only 5-6 hours drive from where I live, and I didn't even consider driving and getting there. Now it's on the other side of Australia in Perth, which time zone wise is a complete disconnect from the rest of the country. That's like 3 hours behind everyone, Perth. But because they have a nice stadium, we're going to do it there. Even though I think Perth is one of the worst time zones in the world. It's not convenient for anyone. The show's going to be like 5 a.m. your time. It's, it's a strange time zone, but nonetheless, point being, I'm willing to go across the nation, pal, to sit down in a seat to watch Cody Rhodes earn his right to the WrestleMania main event. Watch Joanna. If Roman Reigns doesn't show up, I'm going to be pissed. Roman, you're champion for 3.5 years. You don't show up to SmackDown for 2 months at a time. You barely do your job. You're still on your couch, feeding your 5 children in Pensacola, Florida.
Wow.
Show up to Australia. Okay, it's the least you can do. Anyway, rant over, pal.
Yeah, pal, just the fact that you mentioned the time zone got me thinking about one of Hulk Hogan's most infamous and hilarious lies. Have you heard the lie that he's wrestled twice in that he wrestled for like 400 days because he traveled so frequently from the US to Japan that it was like he went back in time and wrestled like 2 or 3 times in a day?
Pal, that's an individual who'll feature in the top 4 of our top 50 countdown. Hulk Hogan, pal. That's one of the greatest of all time. That being said, Kevin, any other things you want to address now? Because we've got our top 40 to 31.
Let's do it. Let's get to it.
Let's roll. I mentioned we do, release content Randy Orton. I guess that'll have to wait.
Yeah, we're going to do that. We got a whole episode dedicated to that coming soon. Don't you worry, pal. We're going to address everyone's needs.
Kevin, there's still Jade Cargill. There's still Randy Orton.
That's coming next week. Jade Cargill next week. We got this. We got a lot. Okay, we got a lot coming up on Elite Heat, pal.
Next week's episode it's a scandalous title. If we titled an episode this 3 years ago, we'd be blackballed in the community, but now we'd be celebrated. So
very
that
raunchy.
being said, Kevin, last week we brought you great listeners 50 to 41 and some honorable mentions of our top 50. Feedback was decent. Some people, in the comments had their feedback. Some disagreed with a few placings. Others agreed with a lot. Here we go, Kevin. 40 to 31. Do you want to kick us off with your 40 to 31 first?
You went first last week. I'm going to kick us off this week, pal.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So for me, coming in at number 40, I have Trish Stratus. So I believe you had, 43?
I had Trish Stratus on my list, was 44.
Yeah, so I have Trish Stratus here. For me, Trish Stratus is the greatest women's wrestler of all time. She's still doing it 20 years later. Maybe in the ring, she's not as good as some other talents that we've seen throughout the years. Maybe Sasha Banks does a more crisp arm drag than Trish Stratus. Maybe. That's up for debate. Trish Stratus, though, is the most recognizable women's wrestler on the planet. I don't even think it's debatable at this point. Maybe Becky Lynch is up there. Maybe Lita. But Trish Stratus is the one that everybody knows. She was the most synonymous women's wrestler with the Attitude Era. Multiple-time women's champion. You already said a lot about her, so I'm just going to keep going.
Yeah.
Number 39. I have Jim Cornette's favorite wrestler, Kenny Omega.
Okay, wow. Okay.
Yeah, Kenny Omega, 39. Now, I have Kenny Omega this high for one reason. Everything that he's done without stepping foot in WWE is extremely impressive. Prior to Kenny Omega, Sting was the greatest wrestler to never wrestle in WWE. Kenny Omega is now that guy. Kenny Omega has countless 5, 6, 7-star matches. His work with Okada, that's our generation, the modern day version of Flair versus Steamboat. It's just something that is one of those like moments in time. If you saw it, you saw it. You can go back and witness the magic, but it's not the same as living through it. I lived through it. I watched all those matches. His run in New Japan is incredible. What he did for that company, he changed the whole landscape of that company. That company was a big staple in Japan for many years. They had a dark period where they were doing some work shoot fights, and then Tanahashi came in, got it back on track. And then when Kenny Omega really got going and the Bullet Club took off, that took the New Japan from a regional Japanese promotion, made it worldwide. New Japan is still going strong, still living off of what Kenny Omega did for them. He's one of the best ever. 38. I have Scott Hall. Scott Hall, one of the greatest Intercontinental Champions of all time. He's responsible for one of the greatest matches in wrestling history. The Intercontinental Championship match at WrestleMania 10. That's a top 5, top 10, whatever. One of the greatest matches ever. He's a member of the NWO, founding member. One of the most recognizable and famous WWF characters of the 90s. Razor Ramon. That's a unique gimmick when there wasn't a lot of unique gimmicks. He's done it all. He's done it all. Big WrestleMania moment. Big character. Member of a great faction. Tons of great matches. The only thing he didn't do was win a championship. The main championship. The WWE Championship or WCW Championship. 37. AJ Styles.
Okay.
AJ Styles, the face of Impact. One of the best in-ring technicians you'll ever see. This guy can do anything. Literally, he can do anything in the ring. You name it. He's had great matches with anyone. You put him in there with Kane. You put him in there with Rey Mysterio. You put him in there with Roman Reigns. He got great matches out of Roman Reigns when Roman really struggled from an in-ring standpoint in 2016. AJ has some good matches with him. But for me, it's about what he did in Impact. He was the face of Impact. And then he came in to New Japan, kind of helped that momentum, built up the Bullet Club, and then he showed up in WWE at 39 years old. And it was like, okay, can this guy make it? Like, he's one of the best wrestlers, yes, one of the best talents that we've ever seen. What he did in WWE within 1 year, he beat Jericho at WrestleMania, became WWE champion. I mean, come on, he's one of the greatest rookie years of all time. His run in WWE put him right here in this top 50. He's one of the greatest of the modern era in WWE. Of the last 10 years, AJ Styles is right there with Roman and those guys.
Yep.
36, I have Big Show.
Okay.
Big Show is, he's a guy that's synonymous with pro wrestling. Everybody knows who Big Show is. He's one of the biggest stars, no pun intended, one of the most recognizable figures in wrestling history. I feel like I don't really need to say much about Big Show. I think it's kind of self-explanatory.
Yeah, and Big Show's one of those like say no more sort of guys. He was there for like 20 years and did pretty much everything in like every company. So
yeah, and a lot of people hate him. He did like the crying stuff, but you know that's neither here nor there. 35, I have Harley Race. Harley Race, one of the best from the territory days. He was the face of like the NWA, the face of like that Middle America, Southern wrestling, along with Ric Flair. He's Triple H's idol. He's one of the 3-4 best wrestlers of the 70s, and then he came into WWF and had a great run as the King Harley Race and did some good stuff there. One of the most notorious tough guys. You know, you can't have a top 50 list in my opinion without Harley Race on it. 34, I have the Mayor, Kane, Glenn Jacobs. It's kind of like very similar to Big Show. I feel like I had to place them in similar brackets. Just wherever I had Big Show, Kane's gonna be right not far along. One of the most synonymous characters with the Attitude Era. One of the most iconic debuts, if not the most iconic debut in wrestling history. He's done it all. He was with the company for over 20 years. Made a ton of money. Made a lot of memories. He's one that everybody knows. Yep. Kane has done it all. 33. Kevin Nash. Big Diesel, pal. An original founding member of the NWO, along with Scott Hall and Hogan. He was world champion in WWE for like, what, a year? WCW champion. The finger poke of doom, another synonymous moment for him. He came back in WWE, had a pretty decent run, wrestled Triple H for the world title a couple of times. Anytime he comes back, people are happy about it. He's still a pretty big deal in the wrestling community, has a big podcast. He's one of the best shoot interview guys you'll ever see. He tells hilarious stories. He's just a guy that people know and is a big name in wrestling, a household name. 32. Jeff Hardy.
Okay.
For me, Jeff Hardy as a kid was one of my absolute favorites. I love Jeff Hardy. Jeff Hardy is one of the greatest tag team wrestlers of all time. Made his name in the Attitude Era. Then he comes back after leaving WWE. The first singles run didn't work out. He comes back and he has this huge run. He's rivaling Cena. Was probably even outselling Cena in merch as the face of SmackDown in 08, 09. That run from 08 and 09, that was peak Jeff Hardy. That 08, 09 run, arguably, that was a bigger peak than some other wrestlers have had entire careers. Like, that 08, 09 run is more synonymous, more impactful than The Miz's entire career, in my opinion, just to throw a name out. Dolph Ziggler's entire career. Throw another name out. I would say Jeff Hardy's peak was bigger than CM Punk's peak. I would say that, too. Jeff Hardy was the most popular wrestler in the world, bar none, for those 2 years. He surpassed Cena. WWE would never tell you that because they want to keep this narrative that Cena was the face for 15 years and nobody came close to him. But I remember it vividly. I lived it. I was like in high school when Jeff Hardy was the man. Everybody loved Jeff Hardy. 31, I have Sting.
Okay.
Sting was the face of WCW in the 90s before Hogan came in. And then when Hogan was there, he was number 2 and he was still great. And he had a great run as a member of the as a feud with the NWO, I should say. Crow Sting completely reinvented his career, reinvented his character. He's a guy that everybody knows. He's another household name. He's still going in AEW because people still want to see him wrestle. People still pay to see him wrestle. He's just a guy that's always been around. Since he pretty much started in the 80s, he's wrestled for 35, 40 years. He's still going today in 2023. The face paint is synonymous. He's one of the most popular wrestlers of all time for a reason. So, yeah. There you have it,
There you have it. So just a recap. So for Kevin, so this is your 40 to 31. So 40's Trish, 39's Kenny Omega, 38 is Scott Hall, Razor Ramon, 37 AJ Styles, 36 Big Show, 35 Harley Race, 34 Kane, 33 Kevin Nash, Diesel, 32 Jeff Hardy, 31 Sting. So that's 40 to 31. Not shabby. Mine, there's some different names in there. This is going to get, I can't wait for this. So, number 40. This is a wrestler. You had 45. I got him 40. Mainly based on the impact of one night, infamously, Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. This one's all centered around the impact of that WrestleMania 3 match. And, I mean, he had a great career, obviously. Incredible in-ring guy, ahead of his time by many years, how great he was technically. But that WrestleMania 3 match, we discussed this, I think, in the Randy Savage bio. It's one of the most significant matches in wrestling history, if not the most significant match, for what it did for, a style of wrestling. That was an era where it was just 2 big guys screaming at each other, body slam, leg drop, match is done. But those 2 guys choreographed a 15-minute masterpiece. So, yeah, that match alone, as for impact on wrestling, I think gets Ricky Steamboat. I've got him in the 40 spot. I'm not going to have him 30 or above. That's too high, but I think 40 is fair, Kevin, and you had him 45. So there we go. Ricky Steamboat, number 40. Next, I've got Harley Race, 39. I know we joked off air that I didn't have him. I do. I trolled you on that. I've got him 39.
You just put him in right now.
I did not. 39, his impact on wrestling, I want to state again, that's the main thing with my list, is what you did as far as impact and how you influenced, I guess, the generation to come and your era and that sort of thing. For his era, he was one of the greatest, especially, territory, NWA, that sort of guy, working with your Flairs, your Dusties, that sort of thing, in the 70s, 80s. And he has such an impact on your Triple H's, your CM Punks. Those guys speak about Harley Race in such high regard. CM Punk especially, trying to be Harley Race backstage in AW in 2023, knocking guys. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. But yeah, Harley Race, 39. It'd be rude not to have him. Next, this wrestler, you had him 39. I've got him 38. Kenny Omega. as far as modern day guys who never wrestled in WWE, he's the top tier. He's the number one. To do what he's done and never have stepped foot in Nick Khan's creation, Vince McMahon's world, Triple H's playhouse, WWE, it's a great achievement. I mean, you spoke so glowingly about Kenny Omega before. I can't really outdo that. I can just restate what you said, which I'm not really going to do. But yeah, legendary career in Japan, a few years of just 7-star matches. Kenny Omega single-handedly broke the Meltzer star system just by existing. And just did some great stuff over there. Hour-long matches against Okada, matches for the world title. His AEW stuff, I don't know. When AEW started, everyone thought he'd be like the company would be 2-3 years of him just as like the top guy. It didn't amount that way. It was the first 2 years as him in like a tag team, long-term storytelling power. Omega looked sideways at Hangman Page, then kept walking. It was that sort of stuff with like the BTE storytelling. But nonetheless, Omega had a great 2021. He was like the biggest star of 2021 besides Roman Reigns. So yeah, he comes in 38. I think that's fair. Not too much higher than that, I don't feel like. But it'd be rude not to have him top 50. So there you have that. Next, 37. This one, I struggled with ranking this guy. Kevin, it's Goldberg. I've got Goldberg 37 because he was so impactful for his time in like the late 1990s at WCW. It cannot be ignored what he did. He was on the cover of TV guides, magazines. Goldberg was like the guy this streak in WCW. But it's sort of like everything else that happened after that. I mean, Howie had the first loss with the stupid bloody taser from Scott Hall, and then he was, putting his elbow through windows on WCW Nitro, and he was missing time, and then the WCW stuff ended, and he came to WWE, and he was there for like a year and a bit, and there was the Goldberg Brock WrestleMania 20 match, and he had a feud with Triple H and Evolution that was, it was and there was that, and that was his run there, and then his run from 2016 through 2022, I think. I mean, some ups and downs. WrestleMania 33 was great against Brock Lesnar. You were in the building for it. That was awesome.
Yep.
But really, beyond that, I mean, the match against Undertaker, Mark Calloway, a guy who's going to come in the top 10 in this list, legitimately nearly died at the hands of Bill Goldberg. I look at the match against The Fiend. That was truly bad. The stuff against The Fiend, the Kevin Owens thing. Like, there's a lot of blights on Bill Goldberg, which really affect his rating to me. But from his impact standpoint, you can't have him outside the top 40. But some of those things, Kevin, in the 2010s and beginning of 2020s, oh my God. And WrestleMania 20 in 2004, there's a lot of with Bill Goldberg. But for impact alone, he must be in this list. So he comes in 37. I don't think there should be much debate with that. If you're putting Bill Goldberg like top 20 all time, your list is cooked. So that being said, Kevin, we move on. Next, this guy is in a similar ilk to the Ultimate. I said his name, the Ultimate Warrior. He's number 36 here, similar to Bill Goldberg. Great year or two. Great run in that regard for Ultimate Warrior. You're talking 1989, 1990, bit of 1991. That's sort of Ultimate Warrior's sweet spot.
Can I interject just for a moment?
Go for it.
I think you might have killed some of the people that are like some of the 40-year-olds that might watch this. Yep. I think somebody just had a heart attack with the ranking of Ultimate Warrior. That's wow.
What, a guy who had 2 good years? What do you mean? Kevin, what did Ultimate Warrior do besides being difficult to work with backstage? Kevin, he had a shoot hit piece documentary made on him. Like, he was very unpopular backstage. He wasn't the most liked guy, Jim Hellwig, rest him. But when it comes to what he did, WrestleMania 6, that main event alone, similar to the Ricky Steamboat, Randy Savage match, that match alone gets you into the top 40. Just that one match alone on that night in Canada, WrestleMania 6. But beyond that, match catalog, in the ring, he had the in-ring ability of a bucket of piss. This wasn't an in-ring guy, and that's okay. There's some other guys I got on this list and who are higher up who aren't in-ring guys. That's not the end-all, be-all, but more so impactful moments. Yes, the Randy Savage match, WrestleMania 7. Randy Savage carried Jim Hellwig kicking and screaming to a great match and a memorable match. But beyond that, I'm looking at the Ultimate Warrior. I can't have him above top 30 to me. So that's where I put the Ultimate Warrior. That one's going to cause uproar as well.
Yeah.
But if you disagree, just let me know. Besides WrestleMania 6 and WrestleMania 7, and a good year and a half run there,
I think after I make my case later on, you're probably going to say, oh, I ranked him too low.
Okay.
You're probably you're
What
probably
is
gonna say that.
WCW stuff? Is WCW run move the needle? Did that do it?
If you're being fair, you're gonna say that. If you wanna stick to your guns and defend your point, you're not gonna say that. But if you're being fair, you're probably gonna be like, yeah, I ranked him too low. So we'll get to that. We'll cover that later on. Go ahead.
Okay. Okay. Well, we'll see that next episode because I mean, to me, there
Go
you have
ahead.
it. So from here, we move next. This guy, he's a modern day wrestler, one who has been coined Mr. WrestleMania modern day. I've got Seth Rollins here
35.
in this position. I was thinking with Rollins, he's another hard one to rank
This
because
is
really he's
35,
never had
right?
a. Sorry?
35, right?
Ultimate Warrior is 36, Seth Rollins 35.
Okay,
Okay.
cool.
Because to me, Seth Rollins has never had that main event run that is just so memorable that clicked. The guys who we're going to get to have had. You know, he's had a few world title runs. 2015 was probably his best one. I watched that live. There was some good match. There was a good match against Dean Ambrose in there. He had a good match against Cena, where the storyline was that he accidentally broke Cena's nose with a knee strike. There was that. But really, that heel run, that's probably his best work. I didn't personally enjoy that watching it live. That was me. Beyond that, 2019, when he was the top star, that was a disaster. So that holds him down. And then at the moment, he's the world champion again. And what we've seen has been fine. It hasn't been legendary. He's had some matches with Balor, a match with Nakamura, is what have you. His stuff with Monday Night Rollins, the IC title, was great. That's a big tick. His stuff with his WrestleManias and his big show performances is a big tick. He's a reliable big stage performer. And I think that deserves credit. So that gets him into the 30s. His in-ring's obviously excellent. And, I think he's evolved his character really well. This is a guy who's had like 10 different characters in the course of 10 years. He was in The Shield, which is worth a shout out. He was Monday Night Rollins. He was the Architect. He was this, that, the other, the Kingslayer, the Beast Slayer, all of it. He's done a lot, Seth Rollins, and he deserves this spot, I think. So that's Seth Rollins. I've got him 35. Next, I've got a guy here who you ranked 32nd. I've got him 34, Jeff Hardy. Now, Jeff Hardy, similar to what you said, I mean, at the time, his peak was so high. He was beloved. But really, what stops him from being top 30, as is the case with a number of the guys I'm about to get to, is that there wasn't really a sustained main event run. And I mentioned that with Ultimate Warrior. I'm staying consistent here. Jeff Hardy had a great, 2 years, 2008, beginning of 2009 sort of time period. But beyond that, he was involved in TLC 2. He was on the Hardy Boys. Great stuff there. He was involved in the match against The Undertaker on Raw 2002. He was involved there. There's some highlights throughout the career, but with Jeff Hardy, the highs come with the lows. I mean, the lows are known. Victory Road and some of the stuff coming out high and he's getting released or, leaving or the DUI. There's a lot of stuff that comes with Jeff Hardy, the drug use, everything comes with that. But objectively, as you said, 2008, what he did, that alone gets him top 35, I think. Just that alone, impact of that. I mean, such impact on you. You lived it. I didn't live that. You speak to that better than me. So there you have it. Jeff Hardy, 34. Next, speaking of guys who had a great 1 to 2 year run, here he is, 33, Eddie Guerrero, Kevin. I've got Eddie here. I think Eddie, from a talent perspective, just purely talent, all time is like a top 15 guy, top 20 guy. He was a 5-tool player who could do everything. But I think the fact that he passed prematurely, rest his soul, that holds him back from being beyond. I've got him 33 here. I think if Eddie Guerrero was alive, today, if Eddie was just still going, he has maybe 5 more years, 7, 8 more years in WWE. He wrestles Cena at a WrestleMania main event. He makes a good feud out of Randy Orton. He has a great feud with Jeff Hardy in 2008. Yeah. If all that stuff happens, I think he is objectively like top 15, top 20. That's my opinion. But from what Eddie provided, what did happen, 2004, his legacy year, that was his year. That No Way Out moment is his moment. 2005, some great stuff as well. WrestleMania, Kevin, against your boy. The storyline with Rey Mysterio, pal. Dom. We saw the start of Dirty Dom. All that kind of good stuff. And then beyond that, as a wrestler, he was phenomenal. The in-ring side of it, charisma, all of it. As I said, talent-wise, there's no disputing his talent and where he ranked there. It's just what we got. What we got from the package that was Eddie Guerrero. I've got him low 30s. I think that's personally fair. I don't know. I know you're going to have him higher. We all understand that. And I look forward to hearing your reason and your position. Maybe next episode or the episode after, we'll see. But yeah, that's why I've got him. I don't think that's egregious where I've ranked him. I've not ranked him in the 40s or not on the list at all. But nonetheless, we can have a debate on that. No worries about that at all. Next up, Kevin, 32. I've got a guy who you had him. Where did you have him here? You mentioned him this episode. You had him 38th. I've got Scott Hall, Razor Ramon. This one, to me, when it comes to impact, the impact of being a core 3 NWO member, to me, I was like, that is just like, that puts him up a few notches. Now, him being above Eddie, I was looking at going, do I have Eddie above him or do I have Scott Hall? That was a really hard one. But to me, being a core 3 NWO member that quite literally changed wrestling entirely, like the NWO single-handedly shifted how wrestling was viewed. It changed the balance of wrestling forever, the NWO. So that played heavily into this list. Beyond that, you mentioned Scott Hall and his WWE stuff, the ladder match, his WrestleMania 10, the stuff he did. He was so important in that regard in the 90s. I'd say personally, in the early in that time period, 92 to 96, I put him, Sean, Brett, you have to put there because otherwise you're saying there's just, nothing. But beyond that, that's the top few, I think, from that time period. I think talent-wise, he was exceptional. Same with a guy like Eddie, but yeah, I've got Scott Hall. What was that position here? 32. There you go. And lastly, 31, Kevin. I've got AJ Styles. This is a guy who, you had him. Where'd you have him? You had
37.
him around 37. Yeah, you had him in the 30s as well. His career. When did he debut? He was in WCW at the end of their run, like 99, 2000. It's now 2023, and he's about to be in a match against Roman Reigns at Crown Jewel or whatever show they do in Saudi. So 24 years, longevity, excellence, always being around the mark, an upper mid-card guy, had a few main event runs. He retired The Undertaker. He's, Impact champion, great run there, WWE world champion, like the longevity of that. He's experienced the full career. Now, if some other guys that had a full career and we had seen everything, maybe they'd be ranked higher. But nonetheless, AJ Styles here, 31. I think that's fair. He's in the 30s. So, Kevin, there's my list. To recap before you fire away, I'm just going to recap this now. 40, Ricky Steamboat. 39, Harley Race. 38, Kenny Omega. 37, Goldberg. 36, Ultimate Warrior. 35, Seth Rollins. 34, Jeff Hardy. 33, Eddie Guerrero, pal. 32, Scott Hall. 31, AJ Styles. So there's my little list there. Thoughts?
Interesting list. Interesting. So now you said that your point for Jeff Hardy not being higher was a sustained main event run, right?
Yes.
So elaborate on that. Elaborate what you define as a sustained main event run.
Multiple years of being either reliable or having content that has such impact. Jeff Hardy, Kevin, beyond 2008, 2009, I can't really say was the guy at any stage. He was the reliable guy. And I look at that. I think that's fairly consistent with the guys that got around him as well, might I say. Scott Hall, his main event run was 96 to 98, really. The NWO, that was his real run as the guy.
What main event run does Scott Hall have as a singles wrestler?
Kevin, he was in the NWO as a core 3 member.
As a singles wrestler, what main event run does Scott Hall have?
Kevin, being in the NWO covers a bit of that. Where Scott Hall lacks in that regard, being a core 3 NWO member speaks for itself, I think.
But that doesn't answer the question, though.
I'm not trying to answer your question. I'm just trying to state my point of view in that regard.
Okay.
That's how I ranked it.
Interesting. So, no, I don't know.
To answer the Jeff Hardy question, though, with regards to his main event, it was 2008, 2009, and as regards to what a sustained main event run looks like, I look at a guy who, I won't reveal his placing, but I had him, a few spots higher. Someone like a Daniel Bryan, for instance, his spot, his main event run, I'd say 2013 through 2014 was his real top run. But 2018, 2019, he had another main event run. It was as a different character, might I add as well. Something like that. That's 2 main event runs in 2 different time periods. Stuff like that matters to me. I don't know. That's just an example. And just generally, he's been a reliable upper mid-carder in Brian's case. But that's how I sort of assess it.
What about Scott Hall's notorious issues of being unreliable? How does that factor into your placement of him?
I didn't have him above 30 for reasons like that, Kevin. Can I just say that? I kept consistent with the Ultimate Warrior in that regard. Jeff
Okay.
Hardy. They're not the most reliable guys. They had some pretty impactful stuff. Not for many years, though. 1 to 2 to 3 years at most. And that's what's got them in the 30s.
Okay, so
So,
Scott Hall being the third member of the NWO in terms of pecking
Yep.
order
hmm
makes him higher than Jeff Hardy and Eddie Guerrero because he was the third member of a faction that was only successful because of Hulk Hogan turning heel. So that means that Scott Hall had a
and you're
better
just
career
forgetting
than
now.
Jeff
You're just
Hardy
forgetting what he did.
and
Like, you
Eddie.
mentioned himself. The reasons you mentioned
He never even
why
won a
he was,
WWE
what,
championship.
38, Kevin. You're ignoring them. The fact the IC title stuff, the WWE stuff, the stuff he did, when the NWO came back and he wrestled Steve Austin at WrestleMania, stuff like that. Are you forgetting that, pal?
And you said Scott Hall had a sustainable run in '96 from '96 to '98. He was he was battling like alcohol addiction and was very unreliable during '97 and '98.
Right.
So, yeah, if we're talking demons here, obviously Eddie and Jeff are no stranger. But it's interesting that you
Well, that's why they're all
penalize
different
those two
ranks.
guys, but
They're
then
all clumped in together.
Scott Hall is above them because he was the third member in the pecking order of a group.
Of the greatest stable in wrestling history.
Kevin Nash and Hogan is fair to have them ranked higher, obviously ranked higher than Eddie and Jeff, but Scott Hall he didn't win a WWE championship or a WCW championship.
Okay.
Jeff and Eddie both did.
Jeff Eddie was champion for 3 months. Jeff was champion for how long? There were hardly long, great runs.
Eddie's WWE title win is one of the greatest title wins in history.
I literally said that as the reason he's in 33. I said that. Kevin, these wrestlers are all like bunched together like this because none of them are like exceedingly above the other. If I had Scott Hall like 20th all time because he was the third member of the NWO and he had a few great matches in the New Generation era, that would be egregious. I have him in the early 30s, bunched with these guys because to me they're in a similar sort of ilk.
So you have Eddie as a third tier guy.
A third tier. Well, explain to me the case otherwise, because I know you're gonna, rank him in maybe the next episode, maybe the one after that. I don't know if he cracks your top 20, but what's your counter? Why should I rank him higher? Explain.
Well, you credited AJ Styles and Kenny Omega quite cleverly for their outside of WWE contributions.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie's outside of WWE contributions were far greater than both of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
Eddie pioneered, along with Rey Mysterio and Psychosis and Chris Jericho, a style of wrestling that is still relevant today and is influential to just about anybody that stepped foot in the ring. Any people that you've ranked higher above him, that you're going to rank higher and above him, were influenced by him. Your idol, CM Punk, thinks Eddie Guerrero is the greatest wrestler of all time. I think you're solely looking at his 2 years as a top guy and forgetting everything else. It's a little narrow-minded a little bit to have AJ Styles above.
So your counter is because he was one of like the 7 cruiserweights with Dean Malenko, Juventud, Guerrero, Jericho, Rey Mysterio, Psychosis.
Well, I'm not done. I'm not done yet. So
that's so far what you've said, but carry on.
One, he's more influential outside his WWE career. I mean, his outside WWE career is more influential than AJ's, and you mentioned AJ's with flying with colors. Didn't mention Eddie's, so maybe a little bias there. You're just doing this just to get a reaction out of me, pal, and I'm not going to give you the reaction that you want. You want to rank Eddie higher, but you're doing it just for content. I understand. I get it. So then two, his entrance is one of the most remarkable entrances of all time. You didn't mention that.
And what about Scott Hall's entrance? He's got one of the most remarkable entrances. So is Jeff Hardy. They're all on the same level.
Eddie's is far above theirs. So then, great tag team with his nephew Chavo. I think if you're talking international and you're talking what these guys did outside of WWE, Eddie is on par with Jericho in terms of breaking barriers and creating the blueprint on how guys like AJ Styles got to WWE.
Yep.
So, and then you couple that with the main event run from 04 to 05, where he was one of the 3 or 4 best things on TV for 2 years in a row.
Yep.
I mean, and then on top of that, he's a member of the SmackDown Six. Uh, the undercard feuds he had with RVD, Edge, Stone Cold, the stuff he did with China, the Latino Heat character. He's
Yep.
done far more than AJ, Scott Hall, and who was the other guy you had above him?
The other guy, what was it? I've only listed Scott Hall and Styles
So,
above him.
oh yeah, those okay. So yeah, he's done far more than those guys overall. You're talking about memorability and impact. Not maybe not far more, but I would say AJ far more. But yeah, I mean,
But the thing is, I take into account there, as I listed for the point, Styles came in when 1999 to WCW, was one of the core guys of Impact for X amount of years, and then had this great WWE run. He had his 2 years as the real guy in WWE. He had his main event run that was like a year or two, and then he's retired. The Undertaker had all this great stuff. His career's been 25 years. Eddie's career was when mid 90s, or are we crediting him for coming in the early 90s in like the
Eddie started in the late '80s.
okay, that's what 15 years,
Eddie
right?
wrestled. Eddie wrestled from like '88 to '05.
Okay, right.
Yeah, and again, what he did is far more impactful than AJ and Scott Hall. If you look at just people remember Eddie Guerrero, people are gonna remember Eddie Guerrero for a lot longer. They're gonna be a lot more fond of him, a lot fonder of him.
I think that's biased personally. That's just me though. I don't know. I think there's a bias there. It maybe in certain community circles.
I think if you ask 10 wrestling fans who's better all time, Eddie Guerrero, Scott Hall, or AJ Styles, I think 8 of them are gonna say Eddie is the best out of those 3.
Maybe so. I just don't believe that. I don't agree. And I've given my reasons why. So Eddie's going to sit there at 33, and we're going to move on with the countdown, Kevin, because I believe, we've given you the reasons,
I mean,
Kevin.
I'm not gonna change your mind. I'm not trying to change
I know,
your mind.
and you're not going to. What you've said so far
Yeah.
hasn't changed my mind. I'm not convinced. I thought this stuff through. I didn't just throw him.
Well, I gotta
at
save. I mean, I have to
33.
save my case for when I rank Eddie. I'm not
I
gonna
know.
give you everything right now.
I know. And you gave a few things there, but when I was putting this thing together, I went through, like, I was looking at it, especially with this one, because this is obviously going to be quite a topical discussion given our show. And I was like, you know, who's he had a similar one impact to, the main event run, what he's involved in, like the big thing he's been involved in. And for me, I looked at Scott Hall's NWO stuff. I'm like, he was in the NWF and O as a core member. And like that changed wrestling completely. That's the greatest stable in wrestling history. And Scott Hall is a key part of that. Beyond forgetting about his Razor Ramon stuff and everything he was involved in there, doesn't even take that into account. I think the impact of that is far more, personally. I looked at that and was like, that's phenomenal. You know, without that,
He didn't win a WWE title though.
Okay, great, sure. I've guys above him who once again had a title run for a couple months, if that. You know, there you go. It's about impact, Kevin.
Interesting.
There
Okay.
you go.
Okay.
There you go.
Interesting. So, just about the impact, I'm gonna ask you one more question.
Mm-hmm.
So, um, where do you what do you like? Do you take influence in consideration too in your list?
Influence in what regard? How do you define influence?
In terms of like your favorite wrestlers being influenced by someone, or like pioneering or trailblazing. Does any of that come into
Well,
play?
it comes into it, right? Because as I said, when Ricky Steamboat's ranked 40, when Harley Race is ranked, and there are guys to come in this list who are in similar ilk, they've influenced quite a few people, and quite a few of the guys who I've ranked in this bracket will say that X wrestlers influenced and inspired. But it's about what that individual wrestler did as well. So partly yes, partly.
Interesting. Okay. Well, what's your overall thoughts on my list? I gave you mine on yours.
Yours,
Yeah.
I thought you had Kane and Big Show too low, was my takeaway. I've got them. Obviously, I didn't name them in this episode, but they're once again. I mean, I'll get to more specific reasons personally. I'm not saying once again that they're top like 15, top 20 guys. That's a bit of a reach, but I think for what they did and how significant they were to wrestling and the impact of them, I don't know. But then again, this is the thing. Impact's a subjective term, though, so I take that take that for what it's worth. But no, I thought what'd you have, Big Show? You had Big Show 36. I don't know. That just felt low to me. And then Kevin Nash, I discussed being the NWO was like a big thing. He was what, 32? Or 33 on yours, as well as his WWE title run. He was champion for a year, and the significance. I think Kevin Nash, should be above the top, somewhere in the top 30.
What one moment does Kevin Nash have that's bigger than Eddie's WWE title win?
What one moment? Are we talking for good or moment for bad? Because I'd argue the finger poke of doom was a more significant, impactful moment.
To who? The WCW going out of business?
To wrestling.
The WCW going out of business and creating a monopoly?
Exactly. Shifting the war, But no, I think...
Okay, so the finger poke of doom is better than Eddie winning the WWE title at No Way Out 04. Interesting.
Didn't say that. I said significance, importance.
Uh-huh.
It can be argued. It was such a moment. I don't know. For me, Nash being NWO, once again, maybe I'm looking at, I think the greatest stable in wrestling history, being a core 3 member, weighs quite a bit. And maybe that's just me. I don't know. But that's how I view it.
Okay. So. And what singular moment has Big Show had that was bigger than Eddie's No Way Out title win?
Singular moment?
Yeah. Anything Big Show have done that you're like, wow, that's really great. That's a legacy-defining moment.
Well, but this is the thing. If we're talking about singular moments, plenty of guys have great, incredible one-off moments. But I'm talking about it's more the body of work almost. When I look at that, I don't know. Okay, I'll get back to you on that.
All right. Well, okay. If you want to take out the bias here, just the same question, but instead I'll ask you, what one moment has Big Show had that's bigger than Jeff Hardy's WWE title win at Armageddon 08?
I'm not saying I'm ranking Big Show 20 places above. I'll be ranking him a few spots
Jeff
above.
Hardy's WrestleMania the Spear with Edge. Like, those are two synonymous moments in wrestling history.
Yep.
I don't see how you could have Big Show or Kane above Jeff Hardy and Eddie. I mean, those big moments mean a lot. It's not a bias thing. We'll see. We gotta ask the people. What do the people think?
There you go.
I would love to see what the people think about your ranking of Eddie. That should be interesting. I want to see the response to that.
Yeah. Well, Kevin, as I said, if Eddie didn't pass in 2005 and he's still living today, he'd probably be top 15 or top 20. But just based off what we got and trying to stay consistent with the rest of what I was ranking, he's 33.
Hey.
So it is what it is. There you go.
Interesting, pal.
There you go. But no, it was just, Kevin, when I looked at your list, I don't know. And I'll get to it next episode when it comes to Big Show and Kane. But I don't know. It's just something about them. I'll get to it. We'll get to it. There you go.
Okay. All right, pal.
There you have it.
There it is. All right, so.
It's steamy. I can tell it's a bit testy. I mean, you need to open the window, pal. It's steamy.
No, it's too hot outside. It's even hotter outside. It's like 100 degrees right now.
Oh my god, pal, you're roasting, pal. It's wrestling uncovered. He's roasting, pal. It's like bona fide hate.